Okay, so I'm going to put together this brief film to kind of video to introduce you to the Witte Observatory complex. What you're looking at here is the road that you would come in on. You can kind of see the places to park right there. Right there is our, we don't have any plumbing, so we do have an outhouse, all right? So it's a complex, so we have a series of buildings. Actually, we were fortunate that we had the Witte Foundation as well as Paint America, or Paint Iowa, give us some paint recently, just this fall, this summer. This first building actually is called Prue Carver, and we're going to take a look at that here in a minute, but that's called the roll-off, and you can maybe see the upper right-hand part where the top rolls off, and the white bottom part there is where we store telescopes. So we'll take a look at that, like I said, here in a minute. The complex also then consists of that round building is what we call the meeting room, and you can kind of see the dome. We're going to take a look at that. We have two domes. That dome houses our Clark telescope. So the building is called the meeting room. You can kind of see here our little, you know you're at the right place. It says John H. Witte Observatory. And then our other dome is over there, and actually that is named after Ed Stone and Jim Kelly, both Burlington natives. Inside there is what we call the Ealing telescope. So on a given night, this might be your first stop. This is called the meeting room, and there'll be club members kind of milling around, so they might say, hey, is this your first time here? That sort of thing. But we do have a guest book every time you come. If you wouldn't mind signing in, that would be awesome. Next to the guest book is a little pamphlet about us, but also, probably more importantly, is next to the guest book is actually a sky map. And the way sky maps work, we'll be talking about them in class a little bit, but you know, the dots represent stars. The bigger the dot, the brighter the star. So honestly, on the back of the sky map is celestial objects, and one of the things I want to encourage you to do is ask questions, and if there's something here that you kind of like to see, I don't know, maybe ask an operator if they could go to X, Y, or Z. Now when you come here in the evenings, the white lights will be off and they'll just be red lights going. So one of the things I kind of want you to be aware of is if you ever go to, this is an observatory, if you ever go to an observatory or do any sort of nighttime viewing, people will not like it you using your white lights. And they also get uncomfortable when you want to take your pictures because the flash on it just drives us nuts. We're trying to save our night vision. The other thing is kind of between objects. I'm going to show you telescopes here in a minute, but between objects, feel free to look at. We've got some great posters, some terrific posters. One last thing about this room is back here we have, this door is usually closed, and this is kind of a resource room for club members. There's a computer back there and some books and things like that. So, on to the next segment. So we are right next to the meeting room in the first of two domes. This actually is called the Witte Dome, and it houses our Clark telescope. So the Clark telescope actually has got a tube. That's one of the most striking features about it. It's 15 feet long. At the end of the tube is a lens that actually is 12 inches in diameter, and it's a refracting telescope versus a reflecting telescope. It's a vintage. It's made in 1937, and actually it was donated by John H. Witte. I got that right. So this is not a go-to telescope, but you can, I don't know if you can kind of see, it does have electricity, and electricity is just so it's polar aligned, and so it can actually keep up with the motion of the stars. As the Earth spins on its axis, stars appear to go counterclockwise around the North Star. And so this actually will kind of keep up with that motion, so once you put something in there, it should stay in there. It does also have setting circles, so even though it's not a go-to scope, you can actually use those as, you know, if you know what you're doing, to hop or to go set them and know where you're going using those celestial coordinates we talked about. So both the domes, you can probably see the slit there, and what we would do is move the telescope to the slit. All right. There we go. You know, there's nothing to look at right now, but to the slit. The thing is maybe that slit is not where you want it to be. So this is one of my favorite sounds here. Over here, this actually makes the dome move. Is that not awesome? So I guess if you're here in the evening and you're kind of waiting around for them to put the next object in the through the telescope, and if you hear the dome moving, there's a chance that they are going to a new object. So, let's see, what else did I want to mention? That might be about it. So, again, feel free to ask questions if you're here, and remember to keep your sheet handy and maybe ask to a specific object you want to go to. On to the next segment. Ready? Okay, so this is the second of two domes, and the dome itself is called the Witte Observatory, and the telescope is called the Ealing. And the Ealing is actually a reflecting telescope, and it uses a 16-inch, so the diameter actually is bigger than the other telescope we looked at. That's a refractor, this is a reflector, a 16-inch reflecting telescope. Now this one actually I'm not trained to use. The other one I am, so I'm not going to go ahead and kind of open it up for us. But it has the slit and the dome moves and everything like that. So if you're here on a given night, I just encourage you to, if anybody's at any telescope, you just kind of say, hey, what you looking at? Or if there's a line, get to the end of the line. There actually are some posters and that sort of thing to kind of look at in here too. So it's all good. Okay, so we've just kind of come out of the door from the the Ealing telescope, and if you look down here, you can kind of see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 circles, and those are actually what we call concrete pads to set up telescopes. On a given night, there's a good chance that one, if not a couple of members have set up their telescopes for public viewing. So feel free to kind of say, hey, what are you looking at? The other thing is, honestly, if you have a telescope of your own, you might want to come up during a public viewing event, and there's always a pad, I'd say usually a pad available, that sort of thing. They do have power receptacles in case you need it. The last segment, before we kind of break for the last segment, is actually we're going to go into the roll-off, and you can kind of see the white building and the gray lid over there. So this last building is actually called the roll-off, and so these telescopes are in the building all the time, which is kind of convenient, and then we just roll off the top and it's open to the skies. It does, because the concrete walls do kind of limit some of our horizon, but I think it works really well. This first telescope is also originating from the John H. Witte, I believe. It's called the Fecker. And it has a refracting telescope, sort of like our 12-inch Clark, and this is a 6-inch refracting telescope. So at the end there is a lens bringing the light back to a focal point, and then that light is unpacked through eyepieces. So I don't know if you can kind of see these 3 eyepieces. This is what we call a turret, and actually kind of the only the eyepiece that's in line with the optical tube is the eyepiece that you look through. But it's kind of handy then when we want to change the power, the magnification, we can just go to a different eyepiece. That's the same way as on the Clark telescope. So this one also will track. It doesn't have any setting circles, but sometimes on a given evening, depending upon how the skies are and how comfortable people seem to be, this actually is a telescope that sometimes we allow adults to actually find objects in. One of the things that you'll learn with telescopes is all telescopes have a spotter, and I don't know if you can kind of see this black over here, but this actually is the finder scope, okay, or the spotter scope. And so if you get a chance to do that, you're going to find your object in here, and these two are lined up, and once you find it in the spotter, it will be in your telescope. So that's just a little bit about telescopes. Of course, the ladder is because depending upon if things are low on the horizon, the telescopes go up, and we have to climb a ladder so we can see. So this other telescope is, it's a Dobsonian mount. So I don't know if you can kind of see that handy little thing. It kind of moves this way, and it moves up and down. It's a Dobsonian mount. This actually is a reflecting telescope. So down here at the bottom, clear down here, is a 10-inch mirror, parabolically shaped. And all that light comes back to here, and then it bounces out through here, and there will be an eyepiece here that we can actually unpack the image. So this is, there's a saying out there, have you hugged your dog today? So that's what that means, have you hugged your dog? This actually is kind of a nice little convenient thing, oftentimes for amateurs to kind of to move around, to manipulate it, to find something in the nighttime sky. The spotter here is actually an electronic, what we call a telrad here, to find things in the spotter, and then it should be in your eyepiece. So the last telescope I want to show you in here actually is the only go-to scope that we've got on a regular basis. Some of our members have go-to scopes, but that means that once it's calibrated, it has a computer with stored objects, and you can actually just tell it where you want to go to. Now this is a reflecting telescope like this one, and it is an 8-inch reflecting telescope. So happens to be a Meade. I don't remember, I think this might be a Meade too. Okay, so that about does it. In here, in this particular roll-off building, we do have a main door, which is kind of the direction I'm pointing. We also have a small little door, which, if this isn't always open, if it's kind of foggy, if it's kind of got a lot of water out there, we sometimes don't open the side door. So again, I hope you will take the opportunity to make it out and see us at the Witte Observatory Complex. We are open on Fridays, the first and third Friday of every month, beginning at dusk for a couple of hours, but when dusk is early, the earliest we are open is 7 or 7:30, so on Fridays. And then the wintertime, in the months of January, February, and March, sometimes we're not open on Fridays to the public because it's so cold.